Coming to you from the Deep South, this is the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. High-impact leadership is not reserved for leaders, and it has nothing to do with your position, title, or rank. However, it does have everything to do with your character. It's time to climb to the next level and beyond, personally and professionally. Now, let's start making it happen with your host, Mack Story.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast today. Today, I continue my 30-part series on my book, Blue Collar Leadership and Culture, the 5 components for building high-performance teams. So today, we're on part 24 of 30. So if you've been following along, you know the last several episodes, I've been focused on the competency component of the transformation equation, which was actually taught to you in part 6 of 30 in this series. So today, I'm on chapter 24, which is titled Facilitate Team-Based Motivation. The subtitle is Engage the People in the Process. So let me just go back a couple of episodes. 2 episodes ago, we talked about high-impact leaders creating on-site libraries, resources with leadership development content, personal growth content, and content related to whatever type competency a person would need to do the job in the organization. Then the last episode talked to you about high-impact leaders providing on-site growth and development sessions, inviting someone like me in to speak to their team, or maybe renting a facility off-site and doing it off-site. But either way, is providing speaking and training by someone from outside the organization. So today, what I'm talking about relative to facilitate team-based motivation is I'm talking about going beyond the event, getting individual team members engaged in the process of cultural transformation. So again, you need to read this entire book, and then you need to read it again to get a deep understanding of the big picture. Then you understand how all this comes together. When I'm teaching you, I have to go one chapter at a time and kind of build it up and set it up. And then once you got the big picture, you're ready to roll out and make it happen using a lot of my other books and maybe other people's books and content. So I want to start you off with a quote from John Maxwell today. He says, "The problem is most people overestimate the importance of an event and underestimate the power of the process." So the last episode is what I would call an event, where someone comes in and speaks, where I come in and speak to your team, and I motivate and inspire them based off of some of my content, teach them some principles. Often heard that a motivational speaker gets you fired up, but you don't know why the next day. You kind of lose it. It wears off. And then I also heard that a motivational teacher gets you motivated, inspired, and fired up. But tomorrow you still know why, because they teach you the principles. So that's my goal, is to always be a motivational teacher when I'm conducting an event. But too many people rest on the event. They'll send one out to an event and think they're supposed to come back and transform the organization because they went to a half-day event or a one-day workshop or something like that. Or they'll bring me in and I'll speak to the people, and the people get fired up and they think the whole organization is about to change, and they don't ever invite me or anybody else back again for a year or two, or never. And those leaders are totally missing the boat. They're making an attempt, but it's not what's going to lead to the type cultural transformation that I'm talking about here in this book. Because too many leaders believe they can provide an on-site development session for their team, send someone to a conference, and they think they'll experience major transformation. But it simply doesn't work that way. You see, attending a development event is like drinking from a fire hose. You'll get some water in your mouth, but most of it's going to go straight past you. And it's going to be a lot of it that goes straight past you. Because you're going to miss most of it, because there's a lot coming at you in a short amount of time. And it's a lot of new stuff. For most people, when they hear me speak, most organizations, blue-collar organizations, they've never heard anyone talk about the stuff that I'm going to talk about. Although there's thousands of people that do it, most of the time in blue-collar organizations, most often they've never been exposed to it. Same way I had never been exposed to it in my 20 years from 1988 to 2008, working in multi-billion-dollar global organizations. But an event is a catalyst. It raises awareness, helps people understand things they were not even aware of relative to personal growth and leadership. It provokes thought, and it also invites reflection. So the thought-provoking content that also invites reflection, that's why a lot of people miss a lot of the content. They'll hear something, then they start thinking about it, then they start reflecting on it, and then 5-10 minutes later, they come back and join us because they went somewhere off in their mind and was thinking, and they missed a lot of content. Then as soon as they start listening again, they get another nugget that raises their awareness, provokes their thought, leads to reflection, and they've done missed another 5 or 10 minutes before they come back and join us. But that's exactly what we want people to do when we're speaking. We want to provoke thought, and we want to provoke and invite reflection based on the content we're sharing. That's how you change people's mindsets. They have to think about it, reason with it, and choose to do it on their own, but they miss a lot of content. An event's motivating. An event is valuable. An event should initiate or support the process. And what I'm talking to you about today, for me and my clients, this is the process I'm going to talk to you about and teach you about today. And the more events you do, the more motivated and inspired the people are going to be involved in and continue the process, again, which is what today's episode is about. But an event is not the process. An event is an event. An event is not the process. An occasional event will not lead to personal or cultural transformation. Even if you do it every month, if you do an event every month, you are so far ahead of most people. And your organization, your culture is going to be much farther ahead than most people. But you're going to risk having the hungry people leaving the organization because an event is not enough. You need to engage the people in the process, not just bring them to an event, because that's what you are training them to think cultural transformation is, just going to an event. That's what it means. That's not what it means. That's a piece of it. But that's not the process. An occasional event, I'm telling you, will not lead to personal or cultural transformation. Leaders must establish an ongoing development process on their own, within their own organization, with their own people doing it, without me anywhere around. Again, I play a role. I motivate and inspire and teach principles and give examples of me getting it wrong, and when I've got it right, how I achieve success from it. But a lot of how I got it wrong, how I applied it in my life to get better personally and professionally. The process, though, leaders must engage the people in the process. And it begins with the top leader relative to cultural transformation. The top leader has to be engaged and also engaging the people. So the process must involve everyone. And I refer to the process. See, an event is like the fire hose, like I talked about. But I refer to the process as a steady drip of content, motivation, and inspiration, which is going to lead to and sustain a cultural transformation. You need a steady drip. Fire hose ain't going to do it. You need a steady drip constantly flowing through the organization. No one's going to pay me to come in and be there every day of every week to do this. That's why I come in for the events. I teach people how to do this. They take advantage of the book deals. That's another reason why the 200 book deal, get me to come in and speak and get 200 books, all part of that one package for $3,600. And then people are set up. They had an event, then they have books to go do exactly what I'm going to teach you about here in a second, to go out and do book studies, to facilitate the drip and go from one book to another book to another book. They don't have to be my books, but it's a very solid way to do it. So the drip is the opposite again of the fire hose. The fire hose is full blast and intense with a short-term purpose. Motivate, inspire, provoke thought, invite reflection. That's what the event's about. The drip is slow and steady with a long-term purpose. So the event, bringing someone in to speak, train, the short-term purpose, keeping the drip going, is a slow and steady long-term purpose, or has a slow and steady long-term purpose. So what do the best organizations do to separate themselves from the rest? That's one of the most common questions Rhea and I get when we start speaking to leaders who are potentially interested in personal growth and leadership development for their organization. They want to know, what do the best organizations do? This is what I tell them. They have leaders who lead their teams through book studies. And it is 100% absolutely what our best clients do to actually get results on the ground. Pretty powerful what actually happens. So let me share with you. I'm going to teach with you about it, but I want to share with you where I actually learned about this, the principle behind the book studies, the way that I teach people to do it. So it was in 2013. Rhea and I had the privilege of joining 150 other people from literally almost every country around the world. It was about 150 of us. And so it wasn't every country, but probably was over 100 countries that were represented. Many of us went down to Guatemala with John Maxwell in 2013 to kick off the cultural transformation of the nation. Rhea and I actually had the privilege to go to the presidential palace and watch John and the president of Guatemala on live television kind of kick off the cultural transformation initiative across the nation. And what we were there for, all of us were only there for a week. And we trained for about 3 days. We trained 2 days on what we were actually going to be teaching and training other people. And then we had 3 days where we scattered out all across the country. And each one of us had about, I think most of us had 3 groups of people, 3 separate groups of people for 4 hours. And we actually had about 50 people in each group. One day I had business executives, CEO type people from all types of industries. Another day I had 50 pastors from 50 different churches. And another day I had multiple mayors and their staff from different cities. So that's who I had on my 3 days. And Rhea was with me, and she had 3 separate groups of people, and the other 150 people or so, they all had the same type thing. Different groups of 50 leaders from all over the country. And we all taught them something. We actually taught them how to facilitate something called a round table. The round table has 3 steps in it. Everyone reads content together, and while they're reading it, they highlight key points. And then when they're done, each person gets a minute to share their key takeaway from the content and why it was their key takeaway. And then the third component was a self-assessment. You had to fill out this one-page document with 4 or 5 different questions and ratings from 1 to 10, and you do a self-assessment. And then each individual has 3 to 5 minutes to share their self-assessment. So we were teaching these groups of 50 leaders. Again, we trained over 20,000 leaders in 3 days, all of us together combined. And we taught those leaders how to facilitate a roundtable, which is kind of what I just described. But what I learned from that, how valuable it was, is what I now teach people to do. And we just call it a simple book study. But it's not meant to be a discussion where me and you go at it about what the author means or what this means to me, and you say, well, no, it don't mean that, it means this. And and kind of get in a back and forth discussion. That's not what this book study is about. I would call that a book discussion. I'm talking about this being a book study. So I'm going to teach you how I teach people to do it. And that's what this chapter 24 is all about. It's about facilitating team-based inspiration, which is a book study. It's why I write my books. All of my books now, since my third book, which was the first one in the Blue Collar Leadership series, Blue Collar Leadership, Leading from the Front Lines. And I've got 13 books now, but that book was number 3. Ever since that book, number 3, all of my books have been 30 chapters, 3 pages each, for this specific reason. So each chapter can be used as content in a book study. It takes 6 or 7 minutes to read a chapter. So what you do, this is how you do the book study. You basically get 4 to 10 people. Everybody has a book. Everybody has a highlighter or a pen or whatever. We sit around the table, or either we get on the phone or we get on video Zoom session or Skype or whatever you're using, Microsoft Teams, all kind of ways you can do it. But you get 4 to 10 people. Everybody's got a book. Everybody's got highlighters. There's no preparation. Nobody has to study. Nobody is special in the group. There's no homework. Nobody is expected to teach. There's no judgment. There's no discussion about religion or politics or sports or any of that stuff. There's no discussion. It's going to be as simple as I'm about to tell you. Now, a lot of people try to make it complicated and they mess it all up. But the way I'm going to tell you right now is how you do it. And it's very powerful if you got the discipline to do it the way I'm telling you. And it's simple and it's quick. Gather your 4 to 10 people. Whoever's facilitating, it could be anybody. But it's whoever knows that I'm about to facilitate a book study. That's who's facilitating. What that means is you read first. It means you go first. So we're going to get our group of 4 to 10. Everybody opens up the book to chapter 1. I start reading. I read the opening, the title, the subtitle, the opening quote, and the first paragraph if I'm facilitating. The second person, they just read the second paragraph. Third person reads the third paragraph. And we go round and around until we've taken turns reading the whole chapter, till we're done. Again, it's going to take 6 or 7 minutes. If somebody in your group doesn't want to read, they say pass, you say thank you. It's that simple. Keep it generic. You want them participating, which means you want them at the table or in the group listening. They don't have to read if they're not comfortable. Most of them will read later when they become comfortable and build trust with the team. Up front, don't worry about it. Somebody wants to pass, say thank you, go to the next person. All right, when you're done reading, this little session now has taken 6 or 7 minutes. The next thing you do, whoever's facilitating, they go first, like I mentioned. What they're going to do, no matter how many things they highlighted, they're going to pick their number one thing that they want to talk about. I'm going to say, I highlighted XYZ because. And the because really is the most important part of the entire session. And the key point is the facilitator needs to always be humble and look for a key takeaway that they need to improve on. Even if they're excellent at it, but they got it wrong yesterday with the 15-year-old son at home or daughter at home, or their spouse, or somebody they were working with, a customer or a supplier or team member, teammate. Doesn't matter. Be humble. Look for look for something that stands out because you need to work on it, or you got it wrong recently and you want to share, I need to work on this because I got it wrong recently. If you'll be that kind of a humble facilitator, you're going to model it for others, and hopefully they'll become that way. And when you're facilitating, you actually can teach that lesson at the very first session before everybody starts, so everybody understands, let's be humble and look for areas to improve. So maybe everybody will start doing it quicker. But ultimately, the facilitator needs to do it and model it, and it'll automatically happen. So the facilitator then gets 1 minute to share their key takeaway and why. Everybody else in the group gets 1 minute to share their key takeaway and why. And whenever they say it, no matter how awesome it is, you say thank you. If they say pass, if they don't want to share their key takeaway and why, you say thank you. And you go around the room. So if there's 4 people, that should take 4 minutes. If it's 10 people, it's going to take 10 minutes. So let's say it takes you 6 minutes to read the chapter. And then you got 4 people. That's going to be 4 more minutes. You got a 10-minute session to do a book study. And then you're done. Get up and leave. Don't do nothing else. Don't talk about the book. Don't talk about the content. Don't have a safety meeting or a production meeting on top of it. Don't mix it with anything else. Don't have any other kind of group discussion. Do the book study, get up and leave. Or if you do it by phone or computer, do the book study, turn it off. If you want to have another meeting, schedule it separately. Don't do it back to back. Don't make it part of this meeting. If you had 10 people, it's still going to take you 6 minutes to read, and then you're going to have 10 minutes to share your takeaway and why. So you're going to have a 16-minute meeting. So somewhere between 10 and 16 minutes is how long we're talking about for a book study. The best people, the best clients, they do a book study once a day. You could do one twice a week. You can do it 5 times a week if you do it every day, or you can do it twice a week, or you can do it once a week. Some clients meet once a month and do 4 or 5 chapters all at once. There's all kind of ways you can do it. The way that I would recommend to do it is 1 chapter per week, because I want to see that steady drip that I was talking to you about. If I'm leading a group, I want to make sure there's a steady drip. Once a month's not a steady drip. Once every 2 weeks ain't a steady drip. Once a day is an amazing steady drip. You with me? But anything's better than nothing. So do something. That's the key. And it's that simple. And our best clients, they do that. I led a client. I had a great client, GAT, Airline Ground Support, led by their CEO, Mike Huff. And before the pandemic, I know they had about 5,000 people. I don't know where they're at, with the pandemic causing a lot of disruption to the airline industry. But I know there's still several thousand. I think last time maybe I talked to them was they had around 3,000, 3,600. Not sure where they're at today. But they had bought 1,000 books. A lot of books they bought. And they had a lot of on-time development scheduled with me. And then the pandemic hit. And Mike says, hey, can you take 10 supervisors through a book study on blue-collar leadership leading from the front lines? Can you take them through a book study online, video training, 10 supervisors from around the U.S. and Canada? And I'll exchange your live time on site for that time. I said, yeah, that'd be great. And I had never done that. I didn't know what it was really going to be like, but it was actually awesome. And the people who were on there talked about, you could tell how much they got out of it. It was really, really awesome. So I got everybody's name, wrote everybody's name down that was on each call, wrote them in alphabetical order, and I would read. Then I would call the person's name, they would read. I called the next person's name, they would read. So I had to facilitate it just a little bit more than if I was in person. If you're in person, it's real easy. You just go around the table. But when you're on a phone or on a video session, it's kind of hard to know who's next. So whoever's facilitating needs to just jot down everybody's name and then just lead it. That might take an extra minute because you got to tell everybody their name, who's next, to keep it going. And sometimes people may be available that were not available last time. So every now and then it may be somebody's missing. You just have to rewrite the names, X out the one who's not there, just keep on trucking. But it's very, very powerful. But what messes it up is when leaders are in the room and they want to start teaching everybody. They want to teach everybody what Mack meant when he said this. That's not what this is about. That would be a book discussion. I highly recommend you do that too. But that's separate. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about a book study, reading together, sharing your key takeaways and why. No judgment, no criticism, no conflict, no yeah, but, none of that. You can do all that you want in a book discussion. You can go back later. You can schedule another event and come back and say, hey, let's talk about what we got out of that chapter. That'll be completely different. You'll get a different result. What I'm teaching you is how to get the best result relative to cultural transformation, where people feel safe to share. And because they feel safe to share, everyone else is going to get to get to listen to what they're sharing from the heart, and they're going to grow together. You may not believe how much people can grow together by listening to me tell you this, but I have seen it. That team of 10 supervisors, what we actually did was we did 3 chapters twice a week for 5 weeks. So Tuesday and Thursday, we did 3 chapters each day. So each week we knocked out six chapters. By the 3rd day, which we were on, chapters 7, 8, and 9 on the 3rd day, that team had already grown together. And these were people who didn't even know each other at all. They worked in different states, and some of them in different countries, Canada and the U.S. And it was amazing to see them grow together as they simply read and shared together. It was amazing. They started to feel like a team. About halfway through, I said, you guys, each one of you go around and I call on each one of you and you tell me what you're getting out of this so far. And it was amazing. Then we did the same thing at the end. And one of the things they talked about was how much they trusted each other and felt like they could depend on each other. And if they had a question, they now knew somebody they could reach out to and trust, and they actually knew and could talk to them, call them up. It was pretty powerful. And it's even more powerful when you do it on site with a work group. This kind of book study, if you're in construction industry, you could do this standing out at the job site. We're talking about a 10, 15-minute meeting. You could do it on the job site. It could be like a morning kickoff or something you do before or after lunch or at the end of the day. Had one leader, he gave me the example. He pulled over on the side of the road because it was time for them to do their call. They do it by phone. He pulled over off the side of the road, got on the phone, got out his book, joined the meeting on the book study, and made it happen. They'd make it happen by phone. What I know is this. People who want to make things happen will find a way. People who don't want to make things happen will find an excuse. It's that simple. Talk to you next time.
Make it happen or someone else will. It might as well be you. Are you serious about taking your career and your life to the next level and beyond? Check out Mack Story's Blue Collar Leadership series books and others, now available on audio, along with paperback and ebooks at Amazon, iTunes, and Audible. Please visit bluecollarleadership.com to learn about Mack's books, programs, special offers, certifications, and more. Thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast.